So hi everyone, lovely to see you. I hope you had a great day so far. It certainly looks like it's been a really packed agenda. It's a great venue. My name's Nicola Cohen and I've spent more than a decade in the world of change management, and prior to that I worked in the world of employee engagement and marketing. I've worked for very large companies, Shell Oil, Bupa, British Telecom, UBS Bank, Anglo-American Mining, and most recently I work as the Global Change Lead for an AI program at KPMG. So that's my day job. But in addition to that, I have a side hustle called the Change Gang, which is all about helping individuals and organisations to improve their change management skills. So today I've been invited by Lattice to talk to you about managing change like a human. And I was delighted to do so, especially because I've spent so much of my career trying to persuade organisations that it's only when we start to manage change like humans, for humans, by humans, and humanely, that we can really be successful in our change efforts. So just bear with me while I try the clicker. What will we cover in this next half hour? So we're going to look at the human side of change and the brain's reaction to it. We're then going to move on to look at the principles of human-centred change. We're also going to touch upon the myriad of activities that HR functions undertake, and then look at how that maps over to a really useful change model that I like to use, which is called the influence model, and that comes from McKinsey. I'm then going to use my own recent experience to, of setting up a Centre of Excellence for Change Management, Anglo-American Mining, to show you how the influence model can help you manage change like a human. Next, we're going to look at Satya Nadella's empathetic leadership at Microsoft and how that leadership style transformed the organisation. And then we'll just finish with a quick reflection on any key takeouts. So I hope that meets the brief. But before I dive into looking at how the brain responds to change, I wanted to reflect upon the world we are living in. I don't know about you, but life seems pretty unstable at the moment. And many of the constructs that we have relied upon for stability in our westernised world anyway feel like they are in jeopardy. And indeed, the latest survey from the World Uncertainty Index for Q1 2025 highlights a few uncertain areas. So global uncertainty remains elevated, particularly due to ongoing geopolitical tensions, economic policy shifts, and climate-related disruptions. And there's regional diversion in that. For advanced economy, uncertainty is more synchronised across those economies, largely due to their interconnected trade and financial systems. Think about the tariffs that have recently been imposed by President Trump as an example of that. And then for developing countries, these countries continue to experience higher levels of uncertainty, often driven by domestic political instability and weaker institutional frameworks. And there's another area of uncertainty, and that's for industries with greater financial strengths or those more exposed to international markets. We're thinking here about manufacturing and finance. And these sectors are more sensitive to spikes in uncertainty. And historical analysis confirms that the increase in the World Uncertainty Index tends to precede significant struggles in economic output. So here we are as HR and change people trying to affect change on groups of people who are feeling the impact and the uncertainty of change from all angles of their life. Bit of an experiment. Can you just, if you've got anything on your laps, maybe put that on the floor for me if that's all right. And I'm just doing that so you don't drop anything. If you could just do me a big favour and just fold your arms for me. And then if you could just fold your arms the other way. Okay, great. Experiment successful. So looking at that exercise from this viewpoint, what I saw was an audience that found folding their arms in the usual way natural and easy, whereas most of you, well, some of you must be ambidextrous or something, most of you who were asked to fold their arms in the other way found it more difficult, slower, and you had to take some time to think about it. So that essentially is what change management is all about, right? It's about trying to persuade people and teach people to do something differently from how they did it before. And the way that they did it before is deeply entrenched in their habits and in their behaviour. So asking people to stop folding their arms the way they're used to and folding it another way is not always an easy thing to do. And it's not always easy because of the way that our brain functions. And this goes back to times where we were all cave people. And according to the author Hilary Scarlett, in her book Neuroscience for Organisational Change, the brain responds to change in very predictable ways. So the first response that the brain has to some elements of change is that it perceives change as a threat. And this is true whether people see change as a bad thing or a good thing. Think about people, I'd love to know what this feels like, but think about people who win the lottery. You know, that on the face of it seems like a very nice change, and I think a change possibly everyone in this room would like to experience. But they still see that change as difficult. It changes their lives fundamentally, and the brain plays a great role in their response to that change. And what the brain does is it triggers a part of the brain that is responsible for our fight or flight response. And when faced with change, it can cause feelings of anxiety and resistance. What next? So the brain craves certainty and control, and change disrupts these needs, leading to discomfort and stress. What else? Social connections. So human beings are wired for social connections, and I don't know if you've ever worked in an organisation that's going through a huge amount of fundamental change, and you know, prior to the change being announced, you were all friends and you all got on terribly well with each other and collaborated, and then along comes the announcement and it's all of a sudden like Hunger Games. And what's happening there is that people's social connections are being disrupted because the people that they thought were their colleagues are no longer their colleagues, they're actually competition. So change threatens these connections and it leads people to feeling isolated. And the next reaction for the brain is around the release of dopamine. So what the brain seeks is some kind of rewards so that dopamine is released and you can respond positively to the change. So it's really important when you're undergoing any kind of change activity that you think about ways in which you can reward the people that are undergoing that change. So what next? So if change isn't easy, what can we do to support people as they transition through change? And what can we do to manage in a way that appeals to human beings? The first thing to talk to is empathy. So the Microsoft case study that I'm going to talk to in a second is all around empathetic leadership. So my recommendation for human-centred change, sort of principle one, is all around empathy first, listening actively and acknowledging emotions, even when leaders find it difficult to acknowledge emotions. And sometimes emotions in change are very difficult to deal with. People can get angry, people can become despondent, but equally people can be pleased by the change. But empathy is really, really, really key. What next? Transparency builds trust. Really key here to think about the why behind the change. I don't know how many of you have worked in organisations that announce a change but don't place much emphasis on helping you to understand why you're undergoing that change. this is really key. Share the why behind the change and be honest about what's known and unknown. And this is really pertinent in my current role, actually, because I'm working on an AI transformation programme at a very established organisation, certain ways of doing things. And along comes AI, and it's disrupting the way that the organisation does business and the way that the people in that organisation work. And you know, what's really apparent about AI, and I was listening keenly to the panel, is that AI is all about learning. We're on a huge learning journey as a world and as industries, and we don't know what we don't know, and it's okay to say that we don't know what we don't know. Really, really important to have that transparency. Next principle, involve, don't impose. So this is all around co-creating solutions, and a really useful change management technique is open source change management, a bit like open source coding, but you're essentially inviting people in the organisation to collaborate and work with you around the shape of the change. So one of the things that we're doing in my current organisation around AI is we've set up a cohort of digital ninjas and navigators, and they are a global cohort of people who are enthusiastic about the world of AI, but they want to shape the way that AI is implemented in the organisation. And it's proving really successful, actually, and is a great kind of bottom-up way for involving people in the change rather than imposing the change upon them. Next principle, consistency over perfection. So this is essentially showing up regularly and communicating often, even if there's no new update. So, you know, for goodness sake, don't cancel the town hall because you don't think you've got a good enough update on what's going on as far as the change programme is concerned. Have the town hall, tell the people there is no update, and keep those lines of communication open. Final principle, celebrate the small wins, recognise progress and reinforce those positive behaviours. When I worked at Anglo American, as you can imagine, safety was absolutely key in that organisation. And we had annual safety awards where we could reward people within the organisation around their individual or team behaviour in the world of safety and in the quest to have zero accidents in our organisation. So we celebrated the small wins as well as the big wins. So what about HR? As you know, I think you're all HR professionals in the room, you know that there is a many-faceted role that the HR function plays in many organisations. And what I want to show you next in terms of the influence model is how HR is really in charge of some of the levers of change and can work side by side with their, sorry, just clicked too many times there. 2, 3, I think that's it. And can work very closely with their change management professionals to really collaborate and push through an effective change programme. So looking at this, you know this, but I'll just reinforce it. HR has a multifaceted role. It plays the role of a strategic partner in driving business transformation. It plays the role in talent management, attracting, developing and retaining talent and fostering a skilled and adaptable workforce. HR plays a huge role in shaping and maintaining positive organisational culture and has an impact around culture on business transformation. HR is absolutely fundamental in understanding and translating broad business objectives, and also plays a role as strategic HR planning, developing strategies that support organisational goals. And last but not least, HR plays a huge role in performance metrics and using those metrics to track alignment and success. So how can we influence change? According to this very simple but very useful model from McKinsey, we can do it in 4 ways, with the premise that I will change my mindset if I understand, I see my leaders, colleagues and staff behaving differently. So this is all in the world of role modelling. So this is all about leaders walking the talk, line managers reinforcing the change and acting as advocates, and absolutely not undermining what the change programme is all about. So absolutely key for people to see that leaders and colleagues and staff are behaving differently according to the change proposition. So an example from our world of AI is, don't tell me to use AI to streamline my work if I can't see you doing it too. So you absolutely need those leaders to role model the same behaviours. Next, I would change my mindset and behaviour if I understand what is being asked of me and it makes sense. So this is all around answering the question why. Why change and what's in it for me? And the simple way to do that is to build a compelling narrative. We are all sense-making creatures and stories help us to make sense. And in my experience, if you do not provide your people with a compelling narrative, a strong and compelling narrative that makes sense to them and isn't in corporate gobbledygook, they will make up the story themselves. So you absolutely need to pull together a narrative that resonates with people on the ground, and even better, co-create that narrative with the people, because then it will really resonate. So I would change my mindset and behaviour if I have the skills and opportunities to behave in the new way. So, thinking about these, thinking back to those, that multifaceted role that HR plays, look at how HR can pull so many levers in this space. HR has a role to play in developing leaders and having sets of behaviours that they want leaders to adhere to. HR has a role to play in creating that people-centred story. And the next one, bang on, as far as HR is concerned. I will change my mindset and behaviour if I have the skills and opportunities to behave in the new way. And this is twofold. So this is about, if you are in an organisation that doesn't have the appropriate skills for a particular change, think about AI. Recruit people who do have those particular skills into your organisation so that they can share their ways of working and their behaviours with their fellow colleagues. But it's also about good old-fashioned talent management and skill development. So don't just send people on the Microsoft Copilot office hours that Microsoft will run. Give people the opportunity to take some time, take the space to experiment with their Microsoft tools, because it's only then that they really start to leverage the full value of the tools that you've put in. And then I would change my mindset and behaviour if I see that our structures, processes and systems support the change I'm being asked to make. So this is about reinforcing the change with formal mechanisms. So if you want a Salesforce to stop selling product A and start selling product B, what you do is you give them a higher incentive for selling product B and a lower incentive for selling product A. And it's all about reinforcing through formal mechanisms the behaviour that you want to see in your organisations. Don't, and I've seen this in an organisation I've worked in, don't talk about being an agile organisation but still having a sign-off process that involves 10 people. You've got to change the mechanisms in your organisation to support the change that you want to effect. So, how to champion change management for better results. It's my view that managing change like a human requires organisations and their people to have a solid skill set in the discipline of change management. And the way that I did that at Anglo American was to use the influence model, I'm very fond of it, to affect the change and introduce a centre of excellence for change management. So what did I do? I started in the second one, fostering understanding and conviction, by pulling together a compelling narrative and putting that narrative out there through clear and consistent communications. And my narrative was twofold. My narrative was around we need to be better at change management because it's better for our people. We need to be better at change management because currently what we're doing is we're leaving a lot of money on the table. At Anglo American, we were in the world of putting in a lot of kits into the mine sites that people didn't know how to use properly. Therefore, we weren't reaping the full benefit of that investment. So it was a business case, but it was also a people-centred case. So compelling narrative. The next thing I did is I got the Centre of Excellence for Change Management sponsored at board level. So thinking about role modelling, I absolutely had the most senior people in the organisation saying that this was the right thing to do. We need to invest in change management. We need to get better at it. Let's support that. And in the world of reinforcing with formal mechanisms, what I did there was I said, enough of this, 100 methodologies for change management across this global organisation. We have one consistent methodology. We are going to put being a change sponsor and a change leader into role descriptions in the organisation so that leaders know that it's their responsibility to champion change in the organisation. And we also did things like, as you can imagine, Anglo American, great at project management, but we put change management stage gates in each stage gate within our project management methodology. We also empowered and mobilised leaders and developed talents and skills by bringing in a comprehensive learning journey, and we prioritised role-specific pathways. We brought in an e-learning pathway and also instructor-led training. And we also stood up a global change management community of practice. I love communities of practice. I love our digital ninjas and navigators. I loved my change management community of practice because they're really effective and you get on the ground change that then permeates through the rest of the organisation. Conscious of time and conscious of lunch, I'm going to move on. So that's what we did at Anglo American. So I'm just going to move on to look at a really compelling real-world case study from Microsoft. So this is around the CEO that joined Microsoft in 2014, Satya Nadella. And at that time, Microsoft was facing cultural stagnation. It was a rigid, siloed and know-it-all culture that stifled innovation. There was strategic drift, declining relevance in emerging markets like cloud computing, AI and mobile, and then competitive pressure. Microsoft, quite simply, was falling behind its rivals in cloud and mobile technologies. So what was Nadella's leadership approach marked by? It was marked by a cultural transformation that he introduced via a learn-it-all mindset. And think about this with AI. AI is all about learn-it-all. How can you encourage people to learn it all, to have the space? So he introduced a learn-it-all mindset to replace the entrenched we-know-it-all attitude. And this shift encouraged curiosity, collaboration, and adaptability. Empathy and empowerment. Nadella is known for his empathetic leadership style, focusing on employee well-being and fostering a shared sense of purpose. And growth mindset. He championed continuous learning and development across all levels of the organisation. Under his leadership, Microsoft pivoted to a cloud-first and AI-driven solutions. It embraced open source development, getting those previously disgruntled developer communities on side. It launched innovative enterprise tools like Teams, and then during the COVID times, gave people who weren't Windows people access to Teams. And it repositioned itself as a leader in AI. And the facts speak for themselves. Market capitalisation in 2014 was 300 billion. 2022, it's 2.3 billion. Cloud revenue in 2014, negligible. In 2022, 75 billion. Employee satisfaction, 2014, 62%. 2022, 85%. And cloud market share in 2014, 5%. 2022, 22%. So this empathetic leadership style that Nadella adapted and applied to Microsoft is kind of, you know, in the world of academia is very well thought of and is used as a model for change. Conscious of your lunch, I've got 15 seconds. Key takeaways. You'll have your own takeaways, but for me, these are the key takeaways. To manage change like a human, you have to understand the brain's responses to change in order to manage change better and to mitigate for those responses. Remember the principles of human-centered change: empathy, transparency, involvement, consistency, celebrating small wins. HR plays a huge role in holding the many levers of change and use them wisely. Use the influence model. It's simple and powerful. Look at how to improve your change management capability because you'll just simply get better results. And take a few lessons from Microsoft Satya Nadella. Learn it all: empathy, empowerment, and a growth mindset. Thank you very much for listening and have a great rest of the conference.